two-headed Rambo-style action with Ikari Warriors. Ikari Warriors is a 1986 game from SNK, known simply as Ikari in its native Japan, and SNK's first big global hit. If you saw the arcade cabinet, you would notice it had unusual joystick controls. It had rotary joysticks, which were to enable you to be able to fire and move in the same time in different directions. Supposed to be easier, but of course difficult to replicate on the home systems. Elite picked up the UK home systems license, and Amstrad owners pretty much had this as an exclusive for 18 months because ChinnyVision reviewed it at the end of '86, saying it probably wouldn't be in shops for the Christmas, but would certainly be available for January. And then nothing happened, and then 18 months later, pretty much April, May 1988, suddenly all the other versions became available. Spectrum, Commodore 64, ST, Amiga and C16. All very odd. Can't see a reason why that was online, so let's just press on and see what the game's like. One thing to note, by the way, is many sites, including Wikipedia and the Ikari Warriors fan site, mention there's a BBC Micro and Electron version of this game. Even the CMVG review of the game mentions a BBC and Electron version. The thing is, there isn't. And yes, we are starting on the CPC because, well, first version. It is a two-player game on all of these systems we're going to see today. So you can select if you want keyboard or joystick and what your controls are. And the game also supports the Amstrad JY2, amazingly, here on the Amstrad. I'll explain what the toggle key is as we go on. And your plane is crash landed in the jungle and you have to rescue this major character. The game is one massive level. There's no different levels, you just keep on walking ahead. You have a finite supply of bullets and grenades, which can also be upgraded. And it's like Commando, really. If you think about it, it's an upgraded Commando. And there we go, blow up a building there and we get some bullets and fuel for the tanks. So you're kind of Rambo here, effectively, and you're carrying fuel with you for when you manage to get a tank. I'm sure that's safe with all the bullets flying around. My mate had this on his 464 and he'd lend it to me, and I really enjoyed it back in the 80s, and we used to play two-player mode as well. And that worked really well. CPC version slows down a little bit when there's a lot going on the screen, but it's not too bad. And it's all done in mode Norton. It looks very nice. Over to the Sinclair Spectrum. And this is on my 48K Plus, so you get to see the composite goodness on your big flash 50-inch 4K TV. People say they like to see the Plus being run, so, and the 48K, so here we go. It's a lot faster on the Spectrum, and it looks identical really to the, in terms of, aside from colours, to the Amstrad version. You would strongly suggest it is in fact the same code base, and I can't think why there would have been such a delay between the Spectrum and Amstrad versions coming out. Was it a legal thing? Was it some disagreement? Did they think it was going to sell better if it was out later when the arcade machine was better known? You can pick up tanks in the game, and you have limited fuel as represented by the jerry can on the bottom left hand side. Tanks can't go through the water, but they can go over bridges, and they're pretty much, well, they're impervious to bullets, but they're not impervious to grenades and rocket launchers and anything fired. It's kind of bigger than a bullet, basically. But you can run down people as you are on the bridge. And in two-player mode, when I used to play this with my mates, what you do is one of us would get the tank and one of us would walk behind. Over to the 64. And before I say this is a nice tune, it isn't, because it loops on over and over and over through the entirety of the game. So I'm pretty sick of it by now. And here we go. Doesn't look as nice as the Amstrad version, but of course it moves far better because of the sprite support. Now, what look like mines on some of the other versions are in fact power-ups on this version, and you can't see what power-up it is until you've picked it up and worked it out. C16 version, yes, astonishingly, in just 16K of RAM, there is a version of Ikari Warriors. And there's some big problems with it, because firstly, you can't fire in any direction other than forward, but all the other characters can fire in 8 directions, and this doesn't seem to be a toggle problem. Toggle allows you, in the other versions, to either fire directionally or only fire ahead, or in the direction you've locked the character in, as a way to compensate for the lack of rotary joysticks. But on the C16, and from the videos I've seen online as well, no, this seems to be your only option. I've watched someone complete the game just like this, although I'm finding it quite tough, because, as I say, all the enemies can just fire in any direction. MSX2. Yes, first for ChinnyVision MSX2 review in one of these multi-format videos. One thing to note, I'm having to convert this from 60Hz into 50Hz, so the animation might be a little bit more jerky. But look at this! Look at this! Just it's silky smooth in proper 60Hz, by the way. Look how good this is! Look at there's these wonderful kind of high res compared to the Amstrad version. Sprites, music's very basic, but it's really nice. We picked up a tank and causing absolute carnage, which is what you did in the arcade game. It was get the tank, cause carnage, especially if you've got the power-ups. Although on the MSX2 here, what you don't get is any status display on the screen, how many lives you've got, how much fuel you've got for the tank, what weapons you've got. But on the plus side, I just look at it, it's just carnage, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's not total carnage, but it is total carnage. It works so well. The music's now it's flashing, so I'm got to get out of my tank. Yeah, the thing about Ikari Warriors is that when your tank runs out of fuel, you have to get out because the tank explodes. I don't know how that works. I've never kind of had a vehicle where it explodes when it runs out of fuel. But there you go. And there's loads of extra lives in the MSX2 version as well, so we can just see one there. A little character. I keep on calling him Rambo because, you know what? Come on, look at that sprite. PC version. I won't be reviewing the PC version in full for reasons I will explain shortly. Available in CGA and EGA. I'm running this in EGA. It's a USA conversion. And what happens is your character always walks forward no matter what, which makes playing it rather tricky. I'm just having terrible problems here with this version. I'm running this on my 486. The 486 is slowed down, so it's running at the proper speed, but no matter how I run this, my character keeps just wanting to walk forward, and I can't work out why. Oddly enough, despite being EGA and being much smoother than the 8-bit versions, I don't really think much of this aesthetic. It's more akin to the kind of, well, it's American, isn't it? The kind of NES aesthetic. There's a very good NES version of Ikari Warriors, by the way. Not covering on ChinnyVision, although people will mention it in the comments, because I don't have one, I don't want one, and I don't really see it as part of the channel's remit. Yeah, from what I can see, that version's rather good. Over to the 16-bits, well, the PC version was 16-bit, the UK kind of 16-bits, the Atari ST version. Unusually for this time, there are ST and Amiga versions. You don't always get Amiga versions, although Elite seem to do Amiga versions. So our plane crashes. There we go. I remember seeing these graphics on the box of the Amstrad version for the ST. I'm thinking, wow, look at that crashed plane. Look how good it looks. In actual fact, gameplay-wise, it's no improvement at all. Slight strategic differences about how far you can fire bullets and so on, but not much. You do get some music as the game plays, and you get horrific slowdown when there's a lot of other sprites on the screen. On the 16 bits, on the ST here. Why would the ST slow down so chronically when there's a lot going on? It's not a processing power problem, it's a coding problem. Oh, I nearly blew up my tank there. Don't blow up your tank. Over to the Amiga. Will the Amiga suffer slowdown? Running this on my 600 doesn't run at sensible speed on my 1200, so got the 600 out. Everything's been out for this. And no, it's actually much faster and smoother than the ST, presumably using the Amiga's sprite support. Doesn't look any different, it's still 16 colour graphics. Amiga sampled audio, but that's about it. Watch out for mines that appear. I say watch out for mines. In some of these versions it's quite unfair, they just suddenly appear when you're next to them. Oh, tank's got blown up. When you die, you lose all your power-ups, which is quite annoying, as we will see later on. When you're much further into the game, you've got massive hordes of enemies coming at you, you need your power-ups. Back to the Amstrad version, which is all rather jolly. ChinnyVision loved this Amstrad version, they absolutely loved it, although, of course, when they reviewed it, they didn't have any other versions to compare it against. So I can't seem to find any reasoning online why the other versions would be delayed for so long, especially when the Spectrum and Amstrad versions are pretty much running on the same code. Don't try and throw a grenade when you're in your tank, because you will come out of your tank. Oh, I've destroyed the other tank there, but I think I've got enough fuel. Back to the Spectrum on the 48K Plus. Graphics are lovely and clear. It's good to run games on the 48K sometimes and on the composite connection to see really how well the graphics work, because some games can be look fine on RGB, but you actually find they're a bit of a mess on a display more reminiscent of what original owners would have had. Of course, original owners would have had UHF, which would have been, well, worse than this. It's nice to have a bit of speed on the Spectrum version over the Amstrad version. They both play, well, identically. Same maps. And they play pretty well. The Spectrum version doesn't really have any noticeable slowdown. I'm watching for it, but it's really nippy, actually. If it is slowing down, it's not as noticeable as, well, certainly the ST version, and the Amstrad has a bit of slowdown. Oh, you've got to be careful there, because you're going to end up blowing up that tank. You can go into the green sections on the Spectrum and the Amstrad. You might think you can't, but you actually can. The tank is enormous fun. Of course, there are so many clones of Ikari Warriors and Commando at the time, Jackal being one, which was ported to the home systems over at Imagine. From my memory, it's pretty bad. But I perhaps ought to revisit that one of these weeks. If you like ChinnyVision, real hardware, and the kind of rubbish I spout, then there is, of course, ChinnyVision 2, link in the description below. We have a Discord, a Twitter, and Patreon, which gives you previews of videos and helps support the kind of madness that I'm doing, well, right about now. And then you'll come to a section where you can't... Oh, the tank's going to run out of fuel anyway. Yeah, don't stand near your tank. I've got infinite lives on the Spectrum now when it runs out of fuel, because it'll explode and you'll be blown up as well. Back on the C16 version, I'm in my little tank. And tank on the C16 is about to run out of energy, so it starts beeping. I mean, look at the scissor action of the legs as he walks from left to right. Another tank down here. It's, I mean, Commando, it's not... well, somebody online on Twitter said to me, well, you know, the thing about Ikari Warriors and the C16 is it, compared to Commando on the C16, it's basically Halo, isn't it? And I suppose you're right, yeah. I mean, C16 Commando is pretty bad. And you're doing this in just 16K with all these limitations. And if I have missed the toggle control, I apologise, but I've watched 2 people play this through on YouTube, and they don't seem to be able to move the sprite any direction other than going forward. Back on the MSX2, which is a joy, and look, there's more power-ups there. I don't know if you get even more extra lives if you're playing in 2-player, or if in 1-player it just gives you enough for 2 people, if you see what I mean. Doesn't matter. Another one up there. It really does dish these out like sweets. But you need them, of course, you need them. Where did I pick up a tank, anyway? The one colour tank is a bit, Another like, extra life. Is it going to get tough up ahead? But it's so gorgeous and it looks so good, and I have to keep on saying this. I'm having to convert this down to... Oh, you do get sampled speech as well when you die. I've had to convert this down to 50 Hz from 60 Hz, so the movement isn't quite as smooth as it should be, although the music and general speed should be exactly the same. Back on the 64, where the music is driving me potty because it's the same bit of music going over and over again. And here's one of the problems with the 64 version. These insane sections where baddies with power-up grenades sit like here, and now I've lost my power-ups. I can't get near them, I can't shoot them. They're up on these rocks and I'm trying to get past, and I'm getting blown up by the shrapnel. It's incredibly bad design. Now, if I wasn't on infinite lives, I would have been long dead. It's just so much harder and not much fun on the 64. And here we are on the ST. And how much better that MSX version is than the 2 16-bit versions, ST and Amiga, with the full screen graphics and no slowdown. Oh, it's chugging. It's really chugging now. And yet a load of enemies have died and it's sped up a bit again, but it's still chugging a bit, and then when all the enemies are off the screen it will speed up. Oh, you've got to hit those bunkers in exactly the right place. Back onto the Amiga. And just to remind you, this is a standard Amiga 600. Not a 1200, not sped up. The speed difference between the ST and Amiga versions is quite astonishing. Get into my little tank. Gotta watch out for mines. And this is the second bridge of the game. The game uses the same bits of the map kind of over and over again. So you've got 2 bridge sections. There's some sections where you're walking with banking either side, and so on. Oh, I've hit something. I've dead. Ugh. You really don't get much time. Oh, I see. I need it. There's a big tank there. And I needed that. I've got infinite lives on the Amiga now. Although you can just walk around the side. There's a nice bit of urgency on the Amiga. Back onto the MSX2. Loads of extra lives again. And it's complete. Look at this. Complete carnage. It's brilliant. Bodies everywhere. I mean, it's like having an arcade machine in your home on this version. Okay, it's on cartridge, and it's quite a big cartridge as well, I think. 128K. Was it 256? I put it up on the screen. And it's just... Okay, you're paying so much more money for it. I mean, goodness knows in the West how much this game would have cost. Probably getting on for twice as much as the ST and Amiga versions. And this is a humble 8-bit. Got all my power-ups, and I'm not cheating on the MSX2. I really am not. That's a great power-up. Look at these bullets go. It's got so much more pep and vim about it on the MSX. It's not one of those... Just... It's actually trying to be the arcade and getting away with it. Clearly it's not good. I mean, all those tanks come speeding towards me there. Yes, it did slow down there. Oh no, I'm back on my standard weapons now. And that's the problem with Ikari Warriors. When you're back on the standard weapons, well, when the game's getting harder, you want those power-ups, but you need to acquire them again. And that's easier said than done in some sections of the map. The shrapnel grenades are the best because they destroy everything nearby. When you get about 3/4 of the way through the game map, and we're on the Amstrad and I'm cheating, it all goes a bit weird and you go into this kind of different setup here. With it's out of a jungle, it's some kind of military base that looks... I mean, I'm sure it's not intentionally looking like a spaceship, but it looks a bit like a spaceship. And you can blow up bits of the walls and there's mines absolutely everywhere. Spectrum 48K. Well, the water sections, which are quite tedious. At some point you think you're not actually moving and then you suddenly are when something else hones into view. And watch out for the underwater baddies because you can't kill them, they still kill you when you touch them. And yes, I did play this through on the Spectrum Plus 2 as well. So there is 128K sound. And you can see what this looks like in RGB. No 128K music in the game itself. On the menu screen there is, same as the Amstrad, but you just get marginally improved sound effects from the AY chip. C64 version, and that music, oh! Well, the mines are particularly unforgiving on the C64. They appear very quickly when you're on top of them. And you can't shoot them because they vanish if you walk away from them. Oh, you see? That's just horrible. Yeah, this moves fast, but it's just horrible. It just doesn't really... It just... Back on the ST. Throwing grenades ahead is quite a good tactic if you've got lots to spare, because especially with the shrapnel grenades, it will deal with anything that's just about to head onto the screen. You're suddenly aware of how small the actual... Oh, that's really slowed down. Just how small the actual game area is on the ST especially. It's really... Okay, got status bars left and right, but... It's really narrow. and yet you still get the slowdown. There you go, shrapnel grenades are really useful because they can even take out tanks at a distance. Do I prefer this game to Commando? Amiga version now we've sped up considerably. Do I prefer this game to Commando? Yes, I do. It's very much Commando improved. It feels far more modern. But it borrows heavily from that game. The baddies are mindless because they always run on the same paths, and then you get this weird thing pretty much before the end of the game. It's like a baddie sitting in a chair with lots of things being fired at you. And you can't fire the weapons, you have to get very close and then fire grenades at him, and then he's just kind of collapses like some kind of monster. And I'm, again, using a cheat on the Amiga version. And what's this? It's Colonel Cook, not a general. I said it was a general. You have rescued Colonel Cook and received 100,000 points. Continue to fight hard. Over to the 64. End of the game again. And there. And you can't kill him. Because he looks like an end of game baddie, right? Because why is he so big? But that is Colonel Cook, who you have to rescue. Although just bombing him doesn't seem to do any harm at all. Why is he so big? Why is he so big? Spectrum version running on my Plus in RGB. You don't get a big Colonel Cook at the end. The game just ends with a message and 48k. Well, there you go. And of course, the Amstrad Spectrum version doesn't have Colonel Cook, and neither does the Amstrad version. If you're wondering how I got on the MSX2 version, playing without cheats, well, I got about halfway through the game. The problem is that, as I mentioned before, it just becomes too hard when you don't have your power-ups available. So you get slaughtered just over and over again. One of the unique things about Ikari Warriors is all these versions have 2-player modes, and it works really well on all of them. The Amstrad's the one I'm familiar with. You used to have a huge amount of fun with this, especially if one of you was in the tank and one of you was walking behind. But it works really well on all of these versions. Ikari Warriors is a game I've got a lot of fondness for because my mate had it on his 464 and I used to borrow the cassette, and it was one of the most polished games I had access to at the time. CMVG liked the Amstrad version, and I still do. Chunky graphics, it's attractive, and it plays really well and tries to replicate the arcade into 64k of RAM. Same with the Spectrum version, except it's a bit faster, and it actually looks really attractive. They've not tried to use loads of colour and have clash everywhere. No, it's all very clean and nice. Loads of control options for Spectrum users as well. C64 version, didn't enjoy it, found it rather poorly designed and overly harsh, and that music just gets on your nerves. It loops over again and again and again. Did they run out of memory? I suspect so. C16 version was better than Commando, but then again, so is a punch on the nose. Remarkable you can do it in 16k, and hey, remember how bad Green Beret is on the 16. Admirable effort, I suppose, but not one you're going to play much. PC version, from what I can see of it, it's very basic. It tries to replicate Ikari Warriors, but it doesn't look particularly attractive, and as I say, I didn't get very far in it at all. Amiga and ST, well, both look attractive, but the ST version is too slow, and it slows down far too much when there's a load going on the screen. These are 16-bit computers, not 8-bits. They should be able to cope with this stuff. It's not the computers can't cope with it. I suspect it was the programmer. Amiga version removes all the problems of the ST version. It's faster, smoother, and generally more attractive. Which leaves us with the MSX2, which is a simply stunning version, even when I've had to down-convert it to 50Hz to put it into the timeline for this video, because all the other systems are obviously 50Hz. Even with that slight jerkiness introduced that you've seen, you'll have seen that it's a really attractive, playable game with absolute carnage, bodies everywhere, missiles flying around, fun in the tanks, and a very little slowdown apart from when there's loads of tanks on the screen. Really polished and shows what you can do when you have all that memory instantly available on a cartridge with that enhanced 8-bit hardware of the MSX2. I think it's simply stunning.